Welcome to another episode of Everybody's Got Something with Seth Hoffman. Our special guests are two very special artists. We have Dimitri Kadiev and the one and only Rev Le Rev. Let's be here. Let's get into it. Dimitri,
Seth.
such a joy to be with you.
Igualmente.
Muchas gracias. En español o inglés? Okay. So, Dimitri, we've known each other a while, and I'm very excited to sit down and just to kind of hear a bit about your story, how you got into the world of arts, some of your travels, about your life. I wonder if you could just tell us, just to begin, who planted the seed of art in your soul?
Thank you, Seth.
You're welcome.
My father was a professional artist. He escaped from communist Bulgaria in '56, and he followed his art through the Iron Curtain. So, and then when he got to the United States, he worked in Hollywood and he did his thing there. But all my friends were musicians, so the creative arts were super fun, super cool. But my father, with the art, there was always materials around in our home, and there was things to draw on, pens to draw with, and my father was a classic oil painter. But anyways, he was the affirmation, the original affirmation of, hey, you know, the creative arts is for real. It's a real path, and you can actually sustain yourself and your family.
Yes.
It's like, okay, thanks, Dad. That's awesome.
Yes.
But after that, and like I said, my friends were all punk rock hippie musicians in Southern California back in the day.
Yeah.
But the big opportunity I got was with an organization called SPARC, Social Public Arts Resource Center. It's in Venice, California, and I was just skateboarding through Venice, California in the sun.
How old were you at the time, just to get an idea of where
Between
you're at
17 and 19.
Okay.
Between 17 and I was just skateboarding through, just vibing the sunshine.
And were you an artist at that point, did you feel, or was this?
No.
Okay,
I was just.
okay.
I mean, everybody makes art. Like all kids.
I know, but
draw.
now you'd say, some people do art, some people, I'm an artist. That's what you. So at this point, art was in your life, maybe. But
It was in my life, but I hadn't embraced it fully yet.
Yeah.
But so I was skateboarding through Venice, and there was a dude on the wall doing airbrush on St. Mark's in Venice, and he was doing a huge wall, and it was Venus on the half shell. And I skateboarded by, and I wanted to show appreciation for the art. So, hey, bro, that your art is awesome. He pulls off his his Walkman. He says, if you come back tomorrow, I'll give you a job.
Wow.
I was like, whoa, opportunity. And so I came back on time and early and every single day after that.
Wow.
In fact, that mural, oddly enough, I didn't even see it until years later, is in LA Story with Steve Martin.
Are you serious?
No doubt.
Wow.
Yeah, dude, it's funny. But I didn't see it until like a couple years ago in Wisconsin, of all places, with the Edwards.
Yeah.
But that was the first project, and I kind of learned how to paint big. And then I worked with, like 2 years later, I got connected with Spark again, and I worked with a painter named Emily Winters. And she would paint big advertisements, but very realistic. And now she wanted to do a community project, so she taught us. I learned about scaffolding and perspective, and it was a beautiful project. But you become familiar with the tools of the mural art trade.
Okay, and so that's kind of planted the seed. And can you tell us a little bit about how it's manifested, what your life is like? Because you live a very special, unique, inspiring, creative life. That's not most people.
Praise God.
What? Yes, amen. Can you just tell us a little bit about your life, what you do? Because you don't just live in an apartment and talk on your cell phone and go to your studio. Tell us about it.
When I was young, there's one of our murals. That's up in Costilla, and that was it was a collaboration with a Tauseño painter named Scripture. He did La Virgin, and that was the home owner. His name is John. But that's up in Costilla, and it's Agua es Vida. It was a justice project about protecting our waters. And everybody who lives here knows how precious and how fragile our water systems are, and they're being abused.
Yes.
So I walked from Albuquerque, being dropped off May 7th by you and your son,
Yes.
on a long walk up to the headwaters of the Rio Grande, which was it's in Colorado. It's at the Continental Divide. At 12,650 elevation. And you see the little tiny rivulets which create the Rio Grande.
Wow.
But it was a water justice project. When I was younger, when you're young, you have flex. You've left childhood, you're entering adulthood, you have still some of your idealism of youth, you have the capacity of adult, but I used it to travel.
Yes.
And as I traveled globally and I traveled nationwide and I was having these wonderful adventures and they were transformative, and I saw that the mural arts and art in general had a place everywhere I went. They had there was a place that was needed and wanted and appropriate and welcomed.
Yeah.
And so I started I started volunteering when I was young in my teens, but when I'd volunteer at some soup kitchens across the country or merciful ministries around the globe, I would see, you're mopping the floor, or you're doing the dishes, or you're cutting the onions, or whatever you're doing, and then I would see that they had walls, and sometimes these are very antiseptic places, and they don't have stuff on their walls necessarily, except maybe framed stuff.
Yeah.
So I would ask, hey, I'm a muralist. Would you guys be interested in a mural? Let's see, can we see your stuff? So I'd show my portfolio, what I'd done, the previous projects, and then there's, oh yes, we would like it here. And then you get to be part of that community at another level.
Yeah.
And they cover the materials, and they're feeding you, and maybe they're giving you a place to stay, and then so it's a trade at the beginning, but then eventually maybe they start offering you a ticket to the next town, or and then eventually they start cutting you a check or whatever, giving you the cash because they believe in what you're doing, they see what you're doing, and they feel blessed by it, and they want to continue that blessing. So that evolved into, I wouldn't even call it a career, I would call it a vocation, and everybody's got a gift from God. I call it God. You can call it divine, whatever you like. But everybody has a talent or a gift. As you find out what yours is and you cultivate it, it becomes your vocational path. And I've learned about the vocational path that it will sustain you. Not only sustain you, but at some point it becomes abundant.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And then you're like, wow, I can share. Look, bounty.
Can you, speaking of that, maybe
Yes.
tell us about a recent project the story of how this recent project had developed? Because it sounds like it's just what you're talking about.
Oh, you mean I could tell you about Costilla, which is in northern New Mexico. It's right near. It's 2 miles shy of the border. It's a very tiny New Mexican town, but I was welcomed in by somebody who gave me hospitality. Hospitality to the stranger. What a great human tradition. And then he was like, I always wanted a mural, and so we negotiated terms. So I eventually negotiated a big enough budget that I could bring in other artists. And at that wall, like I told you, I have this connection with this Tauseño painter named Scripture, and his work is very high vibration, and he. We had been talking over the year or over the months about this project, and he showed up with his partner. She was a talented painter as well, and they were only there for 4 days, but they enhanced the project profoundly with put a jewel at the center of it, of the Virgin, which was astounding. And the people of Costilla are devout Catholics, so to honor that tradition was but for me, it's also the divine feminine. You know what I mean? Yeah. And there it is. There's that project. Yeah. The divine feminine. If you look at her heart, Scripture painted water inside of her heart, waves of water, and a flame above her heart, the heart of passion, passion of Christ, I believe. And then he did the foxes on the right side of the image, and then his lady did the deer on the left side. I did the Pueblo, and I did most of the rest of that wall. But it was a collaboration, and what I've learned is if you stop only, and this is one of the problems of modern civilization, is they get you thinking only about yourself and your own survival. But if you start thinking like, hey man, I know a lot of creative people and I want to get everybody hooked up. Like what if we, we have a big enough budget that other people get paid.
So it's like the fine line of money not having it be about the money, but recognizing it as a tool.
Yeah, exactly, bro. Exactly. Yeah. And then it becomes this this useful coin that you can use to bless other people, and then also accentuate their work and their talent and their good vibration. Because all of the painters I work with across the country, and that's a big piece we did in Los Angeles.
Tell me about how this got started and about the process of this.
This was on Skid Row in Los Angeles, and I got access to this wall from working at a soup kitchen, which was 1 block away from him. There's Derek, and he was brought in by my painting partner Crusoe from Skid Row. Yeah, tell it, Derek.
They probably won't be able to hear it.
Yeah. But Derek was, he got blessed by painting on this wall, and the dude had skill and talent. And that's Tabia. She's an awesome lady.
And so how long was this project, and how did people know? Like everyone's doing different things. What's the process of it? Because it's on such a big canvas with one person, they probably know where. Yeah. So on a big canvas like that, with all these people, with all their skills, what's the process of who knows what to do, where, when, and because I imagine there's layers of where things are happening.
Forgive me, I'm not sure how far back to go into the process, and there's a couple of young students from Loyola High School who were working at the Catholic Worker Movement, and they came and they painted and they had a super good time, and so I was giving them some basic instructions, but they eventually got me a gig at Loyola High School for Earth Week. I painted on site for a whole week and walked away with some cash in pocket, but it was really, I got to teach the young kids at this Catholic school about LA water systems.
Wow.
And then hopefully like, hey, you're the next generation, you guys got to protect it, and if you don't know anything about it, it's hard to protect.
Yeah.
There's with the full beard right there.
Yep.
But that project started when I was on the East Coast in Philly painting with a group called The Simple Way.
Wait, which project started? This one right here?
Yeah, this one. Because my bro, Joshua Grace, who you see his image on there a few times, he's in Philly. Yeah. He and I were painting in Philly for a group called The Simple Way by Shane, which is founded by, one of the founders is Shane Claiborne, a renowned writer. Yeah. We were painting together, and he says before the project's over, hey bro, are we gonna do the winter session? Everybody wants to paint. I was like, the winter session in LA, which is usually January, and all these people from cold places want to come to LA because the sun's still shining and it's like 70. Yeah. So
that was the seed planting of the LA project. So
potentially. No, but that was one piece to the puzzle. Okay. The second piece to the puzzle was I didn't have a wall. When he says, oh, we want to paint, and I was like, okay, where are we going to paint? And then I found out that wall, which I painted in 2017, had been tagged beyond repair. Okay. There's the crew lining up, and it's a super beautiful community project, all the nations of the world are, in some ways metaphorically are represented, all the different folks. But, there's a good vibe and community. But so after that, I found out that this big wall had been tagged beyond repair, but 7 years in a very blighted neighborhood is a pretty long life. And so I said, okay, suddenly I found out that one of our walls, that's Catherine Morris walking with Crusoe. So then I said, oh, we have a wall. And everybody who had been a part of the wall the first time wanted it to come back. Yeah. I said, okay, let's just evolve the image. But that's two significant pieces to the puzzle, which is that idiosyncratic talent base. All these talented people want to create, and they all are motivated to show up. Yeah. And it's not just for a paycheck. It's because the experience is were
Yeah,
wonderful,
priceless.
joyous,
Yeah.
you know, and like it's real life, it's
Yeah.
culture.
Yeah.
And so this is a LA Catholic worker. That's the group that serve on Skid.
Yes. And you also tell us, because you do a lot of work with the homeless community,
Yeah.
both creatively and volunteering and stuff.
Yeah.
Was that always something that, I don't know, spoke to you, inspired you, or was that just through your travels? How did that enter your life?
It's interesting thing I've examined it. I was like, when did that occur? But I was sent to Catholic school for some reason, and they had a devotional service aspect to their raising, you know, the kids up to 8th grade.
Yeah.
And so I remember, like, my father, when I was young, brought me to some of the Hollywood studios, and they seemed so cold. And I was like, I don't know what's going on here. Maybe we have to have a little change and whatever. I'm not. But then I remember maybe it was Christmas or Thanksgiving, and our school went to this church that was feeding the unhoused people.
Yeah.
And I remember going into that environment. It was full of people, and everybody was happy. You know, everybody was joyous. And the people were joyous to give the food and the presents, and the people were joyous to receive it. And the vibe was so warm and so human. I was like, I think this is the kingdom of God, sharing. So even in Albuquerque, when I lived here for 3 years with my partner and our 2 kids, I would volunteer every Sunday with a brother named Alfonso Hernandez, who was, he served pretty radically at 4th Street before they turned it into a street, but it was a pedestrian pathway.
Yeah.
And I remember coming down from church one day and walking into the space where free food was being shared, free music was being shared, like free resources were being shared with people who don't have cash to pay for it.
Yeah.
And I was like, this feels like something very holy.
Yeah.
Maybe even kingdom of God.
And so as you reference God, and it's a big part of your life, did you grow up did you feel this way, or was there a particular experience or something that turned point, like, whoa, what, for you to, you know, to have the passion you do?
Thanks, Seth, for asking.
You're welcome.
After going to Catholic school, I became an atheist.
That right?
Yeah, because they didn't have the questions.
Wow,
they didn't have the
interesting.
answers to the questions. But then
So you've been on quite a journey.
Then in 10th grade, I was at public high school, and the wisest woman I ever met challenged my atheism. And I was like, oh, you just popped open my door.
Can you share a bit about it? I'm very interested
Well, she
from
said,
what you
like,
remember about it.
she was such a smart lady. She was so wise, and she was so deep. Her dad had been an Irish jazz musician, and she was married to a Dene man, and they would do ceremony, and so she was very informed about like the world. She was very deep, and I told her, I was like, I'm an atheist, like it's a big deal. And she said, well, the Chinese physicists have proven God. I was like, have they? Let me consider that. What does that mean? But she challenged it, so I had to like open it up. And then I think, what was it, when I was 20, I worked as a carpenter, bought a VW van, and drove across the country in a VW van, one of the great pilgrimages of American youth.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was seeking the truth, because I realized the religious community respected the truth, and even the scientific community respected the truth. And I wanted to know what it was, because I thought if I could know it, then maybe it would go better for my life.
Yeah.
Just practical,
Sure.
And some people don't believe there's truth. But if there's no truth, then that's the truth. So I'd like to know what it is. And so that was that was my driving idea.
Yes.
And then as I drove across the country, and I wrote, I drove across the country, and I had all these experiences at 20 years old, and I worked on the East Coast. I helped paint somebody's house, and I earned the cash to drive back. But I wanted to go through Louisiana again, because that was one of the places that had the richest vibration. People were generous, and they were hospitable, and they were big and hearted, and and I know there's a lot of Angola prisoners there, so there's a lot of heavy, painful, and the slave trade was heavy there. But New Orleans is so fat with culture and music, and the people are it's so diverse, and so I went there anyways. I was on the way back to California. And instead of, going straight through, I went down into south of New Orleans, south of Houma, into the bayous. And I stayed at a bar, you know, it was on stilts, called Uncle Boy's Dulac Beach and Marina.
Wow.
Yes, and at that spot, I was like looking to get my tires fixed. I was looking to meet somebody who knew how to carve wood, and I was looking for somebody who knew about the plants in the swamp. I was curious. You know, if you look for a few things, you're going to find something. Even if it's not what you were looking for, but you're going to find something interesting.
Yeah.
The wood carver I met was a Pentecostal minister named John Parfait, and he had been a bar musician who knew 400 songs. I was impressed by that, but since that, Eric McEwen knows 800 or more.
Yeah.
Right, and so to me that was very impressive. But he had the transformative experience. He was an indigenous man as well.
Yeah.
And his family, you know, but they were so welcoming, and they had just a little ramshackle shack, man, and you could see the outside between the cracks. And when he found out I was parked at a bar, he says, "No, dude, you can't stay at the bar. You have to stay at my house." It's like, thanks, man. You know, thank you for your hospitality.
Sounds like hospitality has been a big theme.
Yes.
We just have a couple last minutes. I wonder. Okay. We'll have to continue because I want to hear, as we will. But I wonder if you could just send us off with a bit of just some positivity. So many people are so flooded with so much hopelessness and negativity and all these things. And I love that you are so excited. You inspire me every time I'm around you and hear what you're up to. It's just so refreshing to hear the enthusiasm. Is there just something you could share to the world to give a little hope? Well,
there's that old classic axiom, work locally, think globally, act locally. For me, volunteering devotional service has been very significant to spiritually root me to different places. And while I was here in Albuquerque, I volunteered a lot.
Yeah.
But in LA, I volunteered. In New York, I volunteered. So devotional service has been very nourishing and keep me encouraged because you see changes happen every day. You see on a very personal level, you see people's lives being like bettered, and it happens at different speeds and at different amounts. But when you see that locally and you see it relationally, like even if you see your family do well because you helped somebody in your family do something, or it's very relational.
So the act of service
has been foundational,
which doesn't cost anything, generally to
just
do so.
Energy.
So that's
time, energy, and talents.
Okay, beautiful.
But anyways, the second piece, thank you for your patience,
we have just about
pilgrimage.
30 more last seconds.
Pilgrimage.
Yes.
Spiritual pilgrimage has been super rewarding because when you walk across the land, like Albuquerque to the headwaters of the Rio Grande, when you walk across the land, you meet the people. And nature is still doing its thing, and it will encourage you. Look, the sun is shining. Look, the rain fell. Look, there's snow in the mountains, or whatever. You know, it's still doing it. You'll meet animals and creatures. Look, I saw, a tarantula. I saw a falcon. I saw this beautiful plant. Yeah. Anyway, so pilgrimage and devotional service have been very fruitful, but also human relations.
All right. Well, Dimitri, thank
God
you so
bless
much
y'all.
for visiting us and for sharing a bit of your story. And I think those are priceless words to take us out of this segment: service, pilgrimage, traveling.
Mentorship's also, I think, the third piece. Because it's free. It's not like therapy.
Beautiful. All right. Well, Dimitri, bless you on your continued travels and all you create and all of your collaborations. And thank you for the art you've shared with me personally. And God bless you.
Can we do a high five?
Sure.
Thank you, bro.
All right, Dimitri.
Blessings to your whole family.
Thank you. Okay, we are here with my good friend, fellow artist, Rev Le Rev. Rev, it is a pleasure to sit and talk with you. We've known each other for a number of years, and today I'm excited to hear about some of the chapters of your life and the exciting projects you're working on. So when we first met, I knew you as a musician, drummer, didgeridoo player, and many chapters have evolved. So I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit about some of the chapters that have led you to where you are today and the projects you're working on.
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you so much for having me on.
It's my honor, pleasure.
It's great to be here, and it's been a long journey since we first met at
2002.
at Drum Club.
Drum Club at Dr. Blue's house.
That's right, a long time ago. And yeah, I mean, it's so interesting that you say, yeah, I first knew you as a musician. A friend of mine once said to me, you know, you come to music as an artist.
Okay.
And I didn't really understand it at the time, but in hindsight, I can look back and I can go, I'm not a musician like you're a musician. Music is in your bones, it's in your blood, and like, you know music. You're like, I had an experience of music. It first came to me as a form of expression, as a healing process. Drumming, very cathartic at a very, very dark and traumatic time in my life. And so I didn't come to it through the study of music and understanding the like theory of music and all of that stuff. And as I grew, began performing music, there was always I was on the bus as a musician, but the driver of the bus was the artist. Okay. And all of my music, if you think back and you look, had this performance art aspect to it.
Yeah.
The visual, the performative aspects were all so very important to me.
And I'm just thinking of the times I've seen you with your whole setup, drumming with your didgeridoo. I mean, it's like watching a painting come to life. I mean, it's as much, now that you mention it, I'm like, wow, yeah, there's as much to see as there is to hear.
Right, and that was all driving, like, to me, that actually, when I do look back, like, I never could, I tried many times to like force myself to learn cover tunes and like to learn music, to really get in and like and it just didn't stick with me. But the performative art aspect of it was really what was driving me. And I, interestingly enough, came to the end of the road of musical performance last summer after a series of shows that sort of really felt like life, the universe, whatever you want to call it, was telling me this part of your journey is over. And it's not that I won't ever play music again, it's just that I needed to turn my attention to new things.
Yes.
But my journey, interestingly enough, very similar to Dimitri's, except maybe going in opposite directions.
Yes.
I was a evangelical preacher, minister, missionary for the first 10 years.
And is that where the name Rev comes in some way, or not related?
That's a whole other story.
Okay.
We can get it, maybe if we have enough time, we could get into that. I did that in my 20s, and then that whole life completely fell apart. It collapsed utterly. I lost everything. I lost my profession. I lost my wife. I lost my children. And I ultimately lost my faith in what had been hand delivered to me as the truth. And I ended up on a cross-country journey that lasted for a year in 1996 in a 1969 VW bus named Incog Magic.
Wow.
It started out red, white, and rust, and it ended up being a muralized VW bus that I abandoned on Interstate 80 outside of Grand Junction,
I wonder if you
Colorado.
passed Dimitri somewhere.
I might have. We may have just crossed paths, you know. But that journey was for me a transformational journey, like everything that I'd known myself to be.
And was this a solo journey at the time?
It was, except I constantly, was picking up people along the way. That's actually how I made my way. I didn't have any money.
Wow.
Like, I would take people on, they would pay for gas and food, and that's how I made my way.
I wish there would have been a silent documentary and taking a video. I can imagine.
Interestingly enough, one of the projects that we'll get to in a minute is a book entitled Divorcing Jesus, an ex-preacher's journey to find his way to the truth and the light. And it really changed me because I had lost my entire identity, and I was searching, and everywhere I looked, I seemed to come up empty. It seemed to be more of the same nonsense that I felt like I had left behind in Texas. I was thinking I would read an excerpt from my book, but I left my iPad, and so I won't be able to do that. But that book, I'm getting ready to, hopefully by the beginning of next year, I will start a Substack and start releasing it little portions at a time until I'm ready to publish.
Okay, very exciting.
So that'll be coming.
I'm already very intrigued to read it.
It's a pretty amazing book. It's a pretty amazing journey, and I've blended fact with fiction, but all of it is to tell the truth or to convey the truth of my own journey. And I landed here after that year of travel, and within 4 months of being here, connected to Thomas Bluefeather, who owned the property where Three-Sided Hole emerged, and I was working with a band, and we did a series of overnight shows there, and I left the band a year and a half later, and I went to Thomas and said, "Hey, why don't we turn this into a 3-day festival?"
Wow, so that's
and
the
thus
origin.
Began, that's the origin of Three-Sided Hole, and Thomas was, "Yeah, let's do it." And we
have to do some a whole episode sometime just all about the history.
I'd be happy to. I'd be happy to. Yeah. And then out of that emerged Drum Club and me producing other events and shows. And
before we go to the next part, we're going to be doing some actual work while you're telling us. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about the role of the didgeridoo in your life, just because I've never seen or heard anyone play like you do. I wonder if you could just tell a little bit, because I've always wondered, and I've never asked you, and I'm curious how that entered your life and how you became so skilled with it. And
well, it's so interesting.
And I know it's not a quick thing to say, tell me, but I'm very interested.
I can do it quickly. It's interesting because I've had a lot of people say that you play like, different than anyone I've ever heard. I'm not sure what it is.
I mean, most people, I can't really get it. I mean, it's not an easy instrument to play at all, let alone to, with the circular breathing, which I never even knew until you told me that concept. But
it's a bit challenging instrument, and there is a small community of people around the world that play this instrument. I ran into it for the first time at a house party in Austin, Texas, before I left on my journey.
Okay.
And then it popped up again after a Halloween show in Prescott, Arizona, and I went out. Guy had one. I went out early in the morning and started playing it. And then when I landed here in Albuquerque,
we're like, whoa, you seem to have a natural inclination for it.
I didn't. It sounded horrible when I first started playing it. And it was so hard for me to learn, and yet I felt like this instrument was reaching out to me, that it wanted me to play it.
Wow.
And when I landed here in Albuquerque, I met a guy named Jody who was making these didgeridoo creatures out of ABS, which is plumbing pipe.
Sure.
He made these. His first one was named Ariella, and it was this sort of spidery, praying mantis kind of creature.
Yeah.
And he made me a didge. And I went and started playing it, and then maybe a week later, I ran into him at a party, and I'm like, "How do you do this circular breathing bit?" And he told me this trick of using a straw, putting it in water, and then you blow, and the feedback is that if you see bubbles, you're getting a continuous stream. And then he told me about how you force air out using your cheeks as bellows while you take air in, which is just... Wow. So it's just a bellowing sort of thing. And then you can engage, when you get a little more advanced, your diaphragm, and there's a lot of different rhythmic things you can do to do that circular breathing. a week later, I had learned it, just going home and practicing.
Incredible.
And I've been playing ever since.
Wow.
And it's an interesting thing because for a long time I felt very self-conscious about it because it's a lot of people think it's a one-tone instrument. It's a
Yeah.
multi-tone instrument,
yeah.
but like it's very difficult to get beyond the basic drone to the higher sort of like horn tones.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
depending on the dig, those can either be a same note at a different octave or like different notes. And so I eventually learned how to do those things and how to like really be percussive about it, but also
well,
like,
it's
carry
incredible.
that
I mean, the
drum.
voice and sound, I never knew that many sounds could come out of it. And I want to.
One of the things that made it unusual for me was that I began to incorporate like vocalizing,
it was like this, like
harmonizing
barking and
within
it was like a song.
Yeah,
It was like really,
yeah.
Incredible. Well, I mean, we could do a whole show on that, but I always wanted to ask you that, so thank you for telling me that. But I'm excited to hear and see about what you're working on now. So we're going to just pause for just a second, and then we're going to take a look and see you in action.
Okay.
All right. All right. So here we are. We have a work in progress. How can you tell us a little bit about what's going on?
I mean, so I've got some other pieces of art that I brought in that are pieces that I have been working on in my studio that are very detailed. You can see those there. This is all colored penciled. The two that you see there are on vellum, and they're 3 foot by 4 foot. 2 foot by 3 foot, and very, very detailed, meticulous layering. Same, this one on the left is vellum. The one on the right is on black paper, archival paper. So the one on the right is one of my first what I call in situ drawings. So I went to a jazz trio show at Q-Bar, Hotel Albuquerque, and I sketched that out, and then I spent the next week going in and doing the detailing of that. And this one that is in front of me now here in the studio is my second one. I went to Smoky Note, which used to be Monte Vista Fire Station.
Oh, is that right?
Really beautiful place. They've redone that. It's a really awesome environment and atmosphere. And just, sketching. I mean, this is an interesting experience of like having a piece of art that like, when I got this one sketched out and I got it home, I'm like, ugh, I don't like this piece.
Really?
It's very different from thematically, I think, from a lot of what I do. But,
And how do you know when it's like, oh, I should start over? It's like, no, I just need to.
I don't start
carry it
over because for me, there is something that wants to be expressed.
Okay.
And one of the things I heard when I got home, and I'm like, I don't know if I like this piece. The thing that I heard coming, from within me was, you don't get to judge this. Like, that's not your place. Your job is to use your skills and your ability to make this the best, expression of art that you can make it. And, I'm multitasking, talking to you and thinking
And have you done that?
my thoughts.
Is this something you've done before? Is it kind of a different experience, or do you
talking and working at the same time?
Yeah.
It is. And I was a little nervous about bringing this in, but I felt like I wanted to give a little bit of a sense, and I'm trying to just kind of, without going into too much detail here, just trying to like give a sense of like how I approach these pieces of art. Now I'm working on a piece of paper here that is got a lot of tooth to it,
Yeah.
which is very different than working on the vellum, which is incredibly smooth. But I just do this, I engage with this in a typically when I'm working on it, and I'm not multitasking, talking and thinking about what I'm trying to say, I drop into a trance-like state. I'm like in deep flow. I stop, I stop my mind. I stop thinking. And doing the in situ stuff, I'm listening to the music and I'm taking signals from my environment. So this one was at Smoky Note there on Central and Nob Hill, and there's the art bus system has this sign with these 3 orbs and a star at the top, which is where this comes from. At the Smoky Note, painted on one of the walls, is this sort of record-like sort of logo of a record. So I took that and then I threw the needle in. And then, of course, just
So you're kind of like a vessel for what's
thinking about the phonograph and the sound of the music and all of this. And then outside on the patio of Smoky Note, there's a fire pit. There's a long fire pit. And so I drew in the fire flames. And then Tracy is singing, and one of her songs had something talking about chains. And I seem to remember it having to do with like slavery or something. And so I draw this sort of like infinity-like DNA-like strand chain in here. And it's just tying these various elements together. And then the next day, I have this journaling app that I use, and I took a photograph of myself pointing at this sitting up, and I'm making this expression, I'm pointing and going, and so these 2 elements came from me like looking at that picture and going, oh, I'm going to throw that in and add that in. And then, I brought it today thinking, oh, well, maybe I could add in some element of this show, but it's hard to talk. And
and just because I know you had other things so you want to talk about too, I want to make sure
we get it all in.
Yeah, but just in the short time what you've told me about that, just because when I first saw it, I'm like, oh, and now that you've explained it's like a full story.
So yeah, and then as you can see, like from the jazz trio piece, I then will take this and begin to fill it out and turn it into a more developed piece of art. So this is just a sketch.
Wow, I am excited to see where this will go.
Yeah, me too. I think this one will end up being far better than what I would judge it to be right now. I look at it and I go, I don't know.
Yeah.
And again, like I don't get to judge.
Yeah.
I set a goal earlier this year that I wanted to build a body of work, and I mean pieces of this size and the other pieces that you saw earlier. I wanted to have 12 of those pieces. My goal is to have 12 of those by the year's end. I'm probably going to end up around 8 or 9.
Yeah.
But that'll still be, I'll be happy with that.
Yeah,
I can begin the process of starting to like look for
The momentum is there. The
opportunities
momentum
to
is
book
moving,
shows and exhibits and find gallery representation, which is something I've wanted to do for many, many years and just never gotten around to it because I was busy doing performing art. So that's the project that's on board for this year. The other project that's on board is finishing my book, which is telling the story of my transformational journey across the country, which is entitled Divorcing Jesus, an ex-preacher's journey to find his way to the truth and the light. And it's all about finding the truth that is internally inherent within all of us.
Yeah.
And of course, the external world adds to that, but like, it's there, the essence of the divine, of the sacred, of whatever you want to call it, the universe, the cosmos, it's all contained within each one of us. And I feel like that's what my journey has been all about, and transcending the blocks, the barriers, the beliefs that were handed to me, the limitations that I self-imposed limitations imposed from outside, transcending.
Yes.
And I think that's really what the human experience is all about.
Yes.
And then the final one, and we may not have time to play the clip, but it's a project called Rev Le Rev's Dream World.
Okay. Yeah, maybe we can.
Maybe throw that on, and we can.
Yeah.
It can be playing as I go. This is a piece I produced during COVID. It's about a 15-minute. This is just a trailer of it, but
Yeah.
it's a 15-minute piece about being a middle-aged artist who felt like he hadn't accomplished what he wanted to, and he opens this portal to Dream World, where he meets these interesting animated characters, and these are all,
Wow.
I did all of the animation. I did all of this myself.
Incredible.
Out of my 10 by 10 foot room.
Wow.
I'm not completely naked there. I do have underwear on. So.
Okay. Okay.
It's safe.
But those at home, feel free to use your imagination.
Yeah. But this piece, I've got
Incredible.
a producer looking at right now, and if anyone out there is interested in looking at this project, feel free to hit me up.
Yeah.
Also, if anyone's interested in my book. I'm just going to throw it out. I don't know how big of an audience you have, but if anyone wants to be a subscriber to my Substack whenever I launch that, probably toward the end of the year, beginning of next year, text me your
and when this is posted on YouTube, we'll have links, ways to contact you.
Great.
So
we'll put a link on there.
Perfect.
You can send me your email, and anyone who hears this program, put in it, everybody's got something in your email, and I will give you a 1-year free subscription to my paid section of Substack that will be the sort of one of the launching pads for my book, Divorcing Jesus. And again, it's that the title of that book isn't to be condescending of religion. It was about me finding the way that was right for me, because religion was very traumatizing to me, and it really held me back from becoming the person that I felt like I had really, who I truly am, like realizing my potential.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when we talk about success and all these things of, you're saying this about, do we accomplish this? To me, so anyone who's excited about what they are doing, and I can feel your excitement, your passion about these incredible projects, many people will never achieve that success. Yeah. So you're already living quite an exciting life, and may all your projects be fully blessed and reach many eyes and ears and souls. Yeah. And I'm glad we got to hear a little bit about it, and I'm very excited to see the development of this work, of your book, of the videos, of everything. It's just, you're flowing, so just let it continue to flow.
Thank you, Seth.
And thank you for blessing us with your time and your spirit, and look forward to much more.
Thanks for having me on.
All right.
It's been a pleasure.
Bless you, my friend.
And a high five.
Yes. All right.
Love you guys.
All
Peace.
Right. All the best, everyone.
Everybody's got something that nobody else got.